Quiet. From my haunted home, number 333.
Ep.2, Unexplained Evidence from number 333.
Welcome back to Beyond the Bay Window. We hope you enjoyed our first episode, which was really more of an introduction as to what we're going to be doing going forward from my haunted home, number 333. That's just the dog walking in the background, so don't worry about that. One thing I forgot to mention in that first episode is that while we're recording these podcasts, we're actually rolling 4 cameras at all times. And the reason for that is simple, really. My home is still very much active, and we live in hope that one day we might capture what many people would call the holy grail of paranormal evidence, something truly unexplained caught on camera in real time. So with that in mind, in this episode, I wanted to go over some of the old footage and audio we've captured over the years. Now, as I always say, I do try to look at these things with a logical mind. I'm not somebody who instantly jumps to the conclusion that every noise or shadow is paranormal. But equally, there have been moments in this house that I still cannot explain. And that's why I'd love to hear your theories too. Because sometimes another set of eyes or ears can pick up something we've missed. So today, I'm going to share a few of the most talked about pieces of footage and audio we've captured here at number 333. And the first one is probably the clip that reached the most people of all. It's the nursery footage.
The Phantom Arm.
This clip went instantly viral when I posted it to Facebook on Tuesday the 6th of February 2024. But to understand why it shook us up so much, I need to take you back to the Sunday night just before that. That Sunday, the first night I'd managed to talk my wife Grace into letting our son sleep in his nursery. At the time, Xander was 10 months old. We'd always said that once he reached 9 months, we'd move him from the little baby cot at the side of our bed into his own room. But as a lot of parents will understand, Grace just wasn't quite ready to let go. That evening, Xander had fallen asleep in Grace's arms while we were sat on the sofa. So I said, "I'll take him up." I lifted him gently, pressed his warm little body against my chest, and crept upstairs. At the top of the stairs, I turned left and walked into his nursery. A small box room, freshly painted and furnished, untouched really, with one door and a window looking out over the front of the house. His oak crib sitting in the middle of the room, and a rocking chair in the corner where I'd pictured myself reading him bedtime stories in the years to come. I lowered him gently into the crib, kissed him on the forehead, and switched on the HD VTech baby monitor. Then I stepped back into the doorway, looked at him for one last time, and whispered, "I love you, son. Sleep tight." And then I went back downstairs with the baby monitor screen in my hand. Now the plan that night had been to sit and watch a bit of television together, but if I'm honest, we didn't really watch much at all. We were both nervous about leaving him in his own room for the very first time. So we just sat there with our eyes glued to the baby monitor screen, listening to every breath and watching every movement. Every time he moved or made a sound, the monitor would beep and record a short clip, probably about 10-15 seconds worth. Eventually, tiredness won. We went upstairs and got into bed. Our bedroom is wall to wall with the nursery, so if he needed us, we'd have been there within the blink of an eye. But I had a restless night. The monitor was on the bedside table, my side of the bed, and every movement, every noise, every beep woke me up, until eventually I must have drifted off. Then at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, Grace and I both awoke to Xander's usual cries. He wanted changing. He wanted feeding. He was ready to start the day. Grace got out of bed and she said she'd go through to him and see to him. As she went into the nursery, I picked up my iPhone, which is linked to the baby monitor through the app, and decided to scroll back through the clips from the night just to make sure he'd slept all right. At first, it was exactly what you'd expect. The odd flailing arm, the odd kick, little movements here and there. But then I got to a clip timestamped 6:50 a.m. and I saw something that stopped me dead. An arm reaching into the crib. I sat up in bed and played it again. Then I shouted through to Grace, still in the nursery, and asked, "Did you go through to see Xander early this morning, before 8? I didn't hear you leave the room." She came back into the bedroom holding him and said, "No." She'd only just got up when we both woke up at 8 a.m. So I showed her the footage. Her eyes widened straight away. "That's not me," she said. And I looked back at her and said, "Well, it's not me, so who is it then?" To put this into context, we were both properly freaked out by it. For Grace to leave the room in the morning, she would have to walk around the end of our double bed. And I'm 6'4", so my feet hang off the end. I'm a light sleeper, and if she brushes past my legs or knocks the bed in any way getting out, it often wakes me up. But on that morning, to the best of my knowledge, that never happened. I'm certain I didn't wake up until 8 a.m, which is 1 hour and 10 minutes after whatever appears on that footage. What really gets me is if you watch that footage carefully, it looks as though the nursery door opens slightly, then a figure seems to move around the cot, and then an arm reaches in, but the arm appears almost translucent. It seems to pass through the bars of the crib, reach toward what looks like a dummy or a pacifier, and take it. And then the figure just seems to dissipate into the corner of the room. It doesn't leave, it just fades. That morning genuinely shook me. I didn't even post the clip straight away. I waited a day because I wanted to challenge it with the logical side of my brain first. So the next night, as soon as it got dark, we tried to recreate it. Was it one of us? Had one of us somehow sleepwalked without realising? Was it a camera glitch? Could angle or lighting make a normal arm look like it was passing through the bars? But we couldn't recreate it. Not with either of our arms. Not with the same angle, not the same result. And that's why I ended up doing what most modern day skeptics do. I posted it online and asked people what they thought. Since then, a number of debunkers on YouTube have had their say. And to be fair, I do respect people giving their opinion, but I do want to clarify one thing. It is not CGI. If I was that good at CGI, I'd be in Hollywood. The truth is, I don't even edit this podcast. My good friend Mark, or Matt as you'll know him from the books, handles all of that because I'm useless with editing on computers. I even sent the original baby monitor footage recorded directly from the app on my iPhone to one debunker, who later claimed it was layered footage. I can categorically say it isn't. What you see is exactly what the camera captured. And to this day, it still boggles my mind. My son's first night in his own room, and that happens. You do start to wonder what else could be in store. But here's the strangest thing of all. It hasn't happened since. 2 years later, we've used that same camera every single night. We've caught the odd strange orb here and there, now and then, but nothing remotely like that footage. So I'm going to play that clip for you now, and I'd genuinely love to know what you think.
The knocking that answered back.
The next clip I want to talk to you about takes us back to May 2020 during COVID-19. And this one involves Mark, the chap editing and directing this podcast for me. Now, during that period, we kept hearing knocking noises in the house. They would come in 1s, 2s, 3s. No pattern we couldn't make any sense of anyway, but always in these very deliberate sounding knocks. And they were loud, not subtle creaks or little taps, proper loud knocks that echoed throughout the house. At the time, I tried everything logical I could think of. I had an electrician round, I had a plumber round. I wanted to know if there's something in the structure of this house causing it. Pipes, floorboards, wiring, expansion, contraction, anything. But neither of them could work it out. In fact, on occasions, they were here when the noises were happening. But the moment they went to investigate them, the knocking would stop. That was the frustrating part. To make things even stranger, our neighbour wasn't even living next door at the time. She'd temporarily moved away to stay with her family in Cornwall during the COVID pandemic. So the adjoining house was empty. And yet these knocks kept happening. Usually to me it sounded like somebody upstairs was hitting the floorboards with the bottom of a clenched fist. The sort of dull but forceful knock. But every time I went upstairs to see where it was coming from, it'd stop, without fail. I'd get halfway up the stairs and it would stop. I'd stand there trying to listen. Nothing. Then I'd come back downstairs and say to Grace, I don't understand it, it's gone again. So I called Mark to speak to him about it. Now I say I like to be logical, but Mark is on another level entirely. He's one of the biggest skeptics I know. I told him I'd had tradespeople in, I've tried to investigate it, and nobody could work out what it was. And he said to me, next time it happens, get your phone out and record it. So that's exactly what I did. It was the 20th of May 2020. Coincidentally, it was my dad's birthday. Grace and I were at home because of the COVID pandemic. We couldn't go out for the normal family meal that we would for my father's birthday. We were sat watching television. I believe it was The Chase. We were living the COVID life when we heard the knocking again. So I paused the TV, looked at Grace and said, I'm going to ask out. Mark said I should ask out next time this happens. And I asked the question, is anybody else in this house other than us? Any spirits in this house? Can you please knock twice for me now? And almost instantly, 2 huge knocks rang out through the house. Loud, heavy, directly above us, the master bedroom. At the end of the clip you're about to hear, you'll hear Grace's reaction. And I can tell you now that was completely genuine. That's how she reacts when things like this happen in the house. Me, I tend to go towards it. I want to know what it is. Grace is the opposite. She wants to shut herself away and pretend none of this is happening. Now I will say this clip was recorded on an old iPhone 8, so the audio won't sound as loud as it did in real time. but you can still hear it clearly enough to understand why it unnerved us. Have a listen.
Are there any spirits with us now? Even if you're upstairs, can you knock twice now?
Oh my god, I want to get out of this house. Oh my god.
To this day, I don't have a logical explanation for that. Those knocks had been happening for probably 2 or 3 months on and off at that point, and they've returned now and again since. Very randomly. Not all the time, but when they do happen, they often seem to come in 1s, 2s, or 3s. Again, let me know your thoughts.
The voice in the empty room.
The next piece of evidence I want to talk about comes from the 2nd of July 2022. This was around the time I'd finished the first draft of the book, The Lady in the Bay Window. I'd written about 25 chapters and shared them with close family and friends, and the response was basically, "We love it, you should publish it. But before you do, try and get a bit more information about the house. Speak to a medium, speak to investigators, see if you can pick up on anything." So I did both. And on that night, Awakening the Paranormal came round to investigate the house. There were 3 of them, Dave, Kevin and Riley. Riley is actually a close family friend of mine, and as it turned out, part of this paranormal investigation team. I hadn't known that before I started reaching out for investigators. That night, I set up one of the cameras we're using now. A black and white camera in the front room, pointing towards the door at the bottom of the stairs. That area had interested me for a long time because we'd seen shadows pass the door on multiple occasions, multiple witnesses, and sometimes after the shadow, you'd hear footsteps heading upstairs. And the strange thing is, the only way to recreate that shadow logically is for somebody to physically stand behind the door. It's also the same door where my wife and I had witnessed the spring-loaded door handle being pressed down, the door open, and then the handle come back up and the door slam, with nobody there to exert the pressure on the handle. This was the first poltergeist activity I'd seen with my own eyes in this house. So I set the camera there, and beside the foot of the door, I placed an EMF meter. Now, while that camera was running in the front room, all 4 of us were here in this kitchen, stood around the table. A good 10-15 yards away, in this room, through that doorway, was the camera. And we were trying to communicate with whatever might be in the house. From the moment they arrived, their devices in the kitchen were going off. REM pods, temperature devices, aerofluxers, carbon monoxide monitors, you name it. And a couple of days later, I sat down to go through that footage from my camera in the front room. And if you're into paranormal investigations, you'll know this part well. Most of it is boring, hours of nothing, just staring at the door, watching and listening for the slightest thing. So there I was, headphones on the sofa in the front room, watching the footage back, listening carefully for any possible EVPs, watching for the slightest movement. And then I heard it, a whisper, right into the microphone of that camera. "Be quiet." I stopped dead because I knew for a fact all 4 of us were in the kitchen when that was recorded. No one was in the front room. And yet there it was, clear as day, a whispered voice saying, "Be quiet." What makes it even stranger is that immediately after that whisper, you can hear Dave in the kitchen saying, "Come on, spirits, you've gone quiet." So it almost sounds like something near the camera says, "Be quiet," just before he says those words. I even asked my dad to listen to the clip without telling him what I thought it said. I didn't want to lead him. I just said, "Listen to this and tell me what you hear." And he said exactly the same thing. "Be quiet." So I'm going to play that clip for you now. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. A couple of years later, I went on a local podcast with Reese and Alex from It's Grim Up North podcast. They were asking me about the first book and about that EVP, Be Quiet. And Reese asked if I could dig out the original clip for him to use on their show. So painfully, I went back through all the old files on my computer. And because this particular camera breaks recordings into 15-minute chunks, I had no idea which file I needed to find for him. So I found myself once again sat there with my headphones on, staring at that same footage, listening through clip after clip. And while I was searching for Be Quiet, I heard something else. Ironically, 50-ish seconds before that eerie EVP, something I hadn't noticed before. And when I listened back, what I heard was, I love you, Grace. Now, that stopped me in my tracks. How had I not heard this the first time around, for a start? But here's where it gets a little bit stranger. In my first book, which had been completed and published, I called my wife Grace. But that's not a real name. I changed all the names and identified details to protect my family's privacy. But later, while working with a local historian and digging into the history of the house, we discovered that one of the previous residents was also called Grace. So when I heard that whisper, I love you, Grace, the hairs went up on my arms. Was it a spirit responding to the name I'd used in the book? Or was it connected to the previous Grace who once lived here? I honestly don't know, and I suppose I never will. But it shocked me enough that I clipped it immediately and sent it over to Reese with a photo of my shocked face. I'm guessing you're probably seeing that image now as Mark does the editing. Because I genuinely couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm going to play that clip for you now as well. Have a listen and see what you think it says.
Shelley, what's the family secret? Shelley, what's the family secret?
The figure in the window.
Now we fast forward to the 21st of April 2025, not too long back. At this point, I was well into writing The Lady in the Bay Window 2, and I'd invited a paranormal investigation team to the house for what would become a full 24-hour investigation of my home. That team was Ghosts on Trent. If you've never checked them out before, please do. They're on YouTube. They're brilliant. Mark and Paul are two genuinely lovely lads, and they'd originally contacted me after reading the first book because they wanted to interview me and learn more about this house. Back then, they'd asked if I'd ever be open to them investigating here, and I said if I ever wrote another book, I'd take them up on it. I'm a man of my word, so I did. They came round in April 2025, and if I'm being honest, by the end of the full 24 hours, I felt a little bit disappointed. Not because of the fact that I'd met two lovely blokes who are out there to find the truth, but because at the time, it didn't really feel like we'd caught anything major. There were plenty of interesting moments, but nothing that screamed undeniable paranormal evidence there and then. Of course, the real work with anything like this comes later, because Paul had about 6 cameras worth of footage to go through from a full day and night of filming. Locked off cameras, roaming cameras, interviews, everything, you name it, he had to edit it. It took weeks. And then one day, about a month or so later, Paul messaged me and said, I've finished the edit, I'm about to set a premiere date, but I've just found something I want you to look at. He told me to go to 51 minutes and 21 seconds of the video that he'd sent me. To set the tone of what happened on that day, Paul and Mark filmed a few short interviews. Then we'd gone out for something to eat and left the locked off cameras running in the house. And while we were out, there are noises captured inside, tapping and knocking noises that we still can't fully explain. Later, once it had gone dark, they switched to night vision and started lone visuals in different parts of the house. Paul was alone inside at this point. The house was locked. Mark and I had gone up the road to the pub. Paul had made his way through the house with the camera until he ended up in Elliot's room, now my office, which overlooks the back garden. He stood at the window and said something along the lines of, "You've been seen here out in the garden. Do you want to show yourself to me?" Then he sat on the corner of the bed and slowly panned the camera around the room. And at 51 minutes and 21 seconds, there appears to be something visible in the window. When I first saw it, I honestly thought it looked like a woman standing outside looking in. Not the old lady people describe at the front bay window, but more like a woman with short, brown, dark hair, arms folded across her middle, stood outside the glass. Now, if that is a figure, it would have to be standing on the one-story extension outside, literally above my head where I'm sat right now. So yes, in theory, a person could stand there, but what bothers me is this: it doesn't look like a solid person. It looks see-through, it looks translucent. And I can guarantee to you that Paul was alone in the house and the doors were locked. When I first saw the still image from that footage, I sent it to my dad. Within minutes, he sent back a photograph of my mom on her wedding day. My mom, bless her, passed away in May 2023. And my dad said that the figure in the window looked like her on her wedding day. Now, I hadn't made this connection myself straight away, partly because it wasn't how I pictured my mom. But when he sent the photo, it did make me stop and think, could it be her? It would be lovely to think so. I'm not saying that it is. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm simply sharing what the camera captured and the reaction it caused. Because equally it could be pareidolia. The mind seeing a figure in shapes, reflections, rain, shadows, branches, light distortion. There were trees at the end of the garden. It was raining heavily that night. There was rain on the outside of the window. There are all sorts of logical possibilities that my brain won't let me see through at the minute. And that's why I'm still on the fence with it. Some people who've looked at it think it's just pareidolia. Others think it's genuinely a figure. Interestingly, when we discussed it afterwards, Paul was very sceptical and leaned towards pareidolia. Mark from Ghosts on Trent thought it looked like my mom. And me, as usual, I sat somewhere in the middle and said I wanted to recreate it. Same camera, same lighting, same weather if possible, same room, same angle, because that's the only way you can really test something like this properly. So I'm going to show you that footage now, and again, I'd love to know what you think it is.
That looks like a woman staring through the window. Was it a trick of the light? A shadow? Or did he unknowingly capture the very entity people have talked about for years? Decide for yourself.
So that's everything I wanted to share with you in this episode. From the nursery footage, to the unexplained knocks, to the EVPs, to the possible figure caught during the Ghosts on Trent investigation. Whether you believe these moments are paranormal, misidentified, camera glitches, audio contamination, or just coincidence, or something else entirely, I'll leave that up to you. Because what I've always tried to do with this house, with these books, and now with this podcast, is not tell people what they have to believe. I just want to present the evidence as honestly as I can, tell you exactly what happened, and let you make up your own mind. And if nothing else, I can think we all agree on one thing. Number 333 has given us some very, very strange moments over the years. So if you've got a theory about any of the clips from today's episode, please do let us know in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear what you think. especially if you can offer a logical explanation for any of it. And if you've enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Bay Window, please make sure you follow, subscribe, share it around, and help us spread the word. Because who knows, with 4 cameras rolling in an active house, every time we record, maybe one day we will catch that Holy Grail moment. Until next time, sleep tight.